when the idea of immigrating to the States came up, it was all the land of music. It's like the possibilities are going to be endless. It wasn't, it's going to be a struggle or the finances and sort of the real life stuff. It was just like, great, I get to watch Knight Rider all the time.
Hey everyone, welcome to A Life in 6 Songs. I'm your host, David Reese, and I'm joined by my co-host, Carolina, who also happens to be my wife, and my childhood friend, Raza. For those of you new to the podcast, each week we embark on an epic adventure to find the songs that are stuck to us, like audible tattoos that tell the story of who we are and where we've been. It's a life story told through 6 songs. Let's go have a listen together. So for this episode, we're in our 3rd episode, and we've kicked this podcast off by learning more about myself in the first episode, Carolina in the last episode, and so this week we're going to round out our stories of our host, and we're going to tell Raza's story. So Raza is a lawyer and veteran advocate. He's a musician and started by playing drums in high school, and then switched after high school to guitar. I wanted to write, more music and be able to kind of compose in that way, and has a solo project out there that we'll get in and talk more about, Solamente. And so we're just, happy to have him on today and share this story. So, yay!
Thank you.
Welcome to your own show, Raza.
Welcome to your own show. Yes.
Love this team. Love the team.
That's right. Here we go. So to kick us off, before we get into your 6 songs, why don't you tell us, a little bit about your earliest music memory?
Yeah. As you know, I've been sort of a lifelong fan of music in general, and maybe some of the heavier stuff, and that goes back to all the way back to, my earliest memory, which is probably maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. I was born in Pakistan. I grew up in Pakistan. My family was always, there was music always playing in the house. We had sort of an appreciation for art and music and all the sort of, humanities and politics and things like that in the house. And yeah, my earliest memory is my dad blasting, Pink Floyd in the house, Another Brick in the Wall, the Star Wars soundtrack, a lot of the local sort of folk, Pakistani music as well. The Beatles, Beatles references were going on all the time. And then he would talk about things like, to this day, actually, my dad I realized, many years later that, there's a term for that. He's an audiophile. He loved talking about music and sort of like the engineering and physics of the science of music, how sound works and the difference between, mono and stereo and surround sound and, when you hear certain things in certain spaces. So yeah, there's an appreciation of music at a very early age. And that, I think, I'd sort of learned about that and became a part of me, and it's been ever since. We immigrated to the States when I was about 10 years old. My tastes in music might have changed and shifted. I'm much more of a filter now, and I still appreciate music. I can nerd out on music, and now we can talk about sort of technical aspects of music and time signatures and tempos and things like that. But yeah, earliest memory is just music in the house all the time.
That's so cool when your childhood is filled with those kinds of things. We don't think we realize how how much it leaves an impression on us. And at the time, you probably didn't know you'd be immigrating to a whole other country, and like what that would open up for you too. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. And one of the, I remember, I mean, probably closer to, this was like in the late 80s, I would say 87, 88 or so. When the idea of immigrating to the States came up, it was all, oh, the land of music. It's like the possibilities are going to be endless. It wasn't, it's going to be a struggle or the finances and sort of
Right.
the real life stuff. It was just like, great, I get to watch Knight Rider all the time. Uh, and all this stuff that you see on TV that America is known for. MTV was big back then, and
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was all about the entertainment and pop culture and getting closer to it.
Nice. Did
Yeah.
you know that like your home life had this special quality to it of being just, surrounded by music? Like did you know were you aware it was a thing? Because a lot of times when you're young, you're not aware that your household is sort of anything special because you're not sure exactly what goes on in others. So you just assume like, well, we do this, and so yeah, doesn't everybody do it like this? Were you aware that this was something like special?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, such a great question. This is stuff that I've been sort of grappling with actually as an adult now, like, like after you get married and after you have your own household and things like that. Um, I had, at the time, I thought that was the norm. It was the norm that you live in an amazing big, multi-story house, and you have people with multiple vehicles, like the equivalent of being bougie, right? We were sort of bougie in Pakistan. I was a city, I grew up in the city in Lahore. It's the second largest city in Pakistan, which is figure like Chicago, like not New
Mm-hmm.
York, but Chicago. And yeah, we would sort of have intellectual debates about everything from politics to welfare states and socialism and capitalism and things like that. And the 80s were a big. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the world. Obviously, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but so those types of debates I thought were the norm. I didn't realize that no, we're a very, very small minority of people that have, that have. I think privilege is the right word. We weren't like super wealthy, but we had a home and we had the basic amenities and things like that. So yeah, I didn't realize that even that is an exception, because Pakistan is a country of about 200 million people, and the vast majority, unfortunately, they're not doing well. It's an agricultural based economy, and there's tons of illiteracy and tons of social problems and things like that. And we're actually very lucky. So I realized that, and definitely I'm grateful for that. But at the time had no idea that going to polo clubs was the norm, and hanging out and talking shop about the various types of teas and the cuts of meat. But yeah, that's how we grew up. Our real struggle started when we came to America, actually. Then we realized, oh crap, well, electricity is cheap, but the salami not so much.
Mm. Let's get into your songs. That very much sort of sets the stage for us.
Okay.
And so, for your first song, we've talked about how, growing up in a house that just so appreciates music, and it's just there. And you can put yourself there. Tell us about a time and a song that, when you hear it, transports you instantly to a specific time or place.
Yep. Yeah. So we immigrated to the States. We flew into JFK, and the year was 1990. We had our sort of green cards in hand. All the promise of America, before us. And from New York, very, very quickly after that, we moved to South Florida. And I just remember it being hot and more hot. And
With
you're
some
trying
more
to find your
huts.
way in school and making friends and things like that. And fast forward, I would say maybe 6 months or so, summer of 1991, Terminator 2 comes out. It's the biggest movie, at the time, revolutionary, all kinds of great like sci-fi and action and violence and things like that. I had no idea about the movie other than watching MTV. This amazing drum fill happens, and this guy's screeching voice, blaring through my TV, and it's Guns N' Roses, and the song is "You Could Be Mine," and that is the soundtrack of us arriving in America, as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. Let's take a listen.
Yep, I hear that, and I hear Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Terminator 2. I watched it like 3 or 4 times in the theaters with my friends, and yeah, love that song. And that song was sort of the transition into just a lifelong love of Guns N' Roses. And the funny thing is that I heard heavy music, metal, in Pakistan through some of my cousins and stuff like that. Some stuff you just gravitate toward. And
the cousins. Yep.
Oh man, yeah. And it's like I heard Run DMC through them. I heard Salt and Pepper through them. I heard local Pakistani music through them. But then the stuff that just happened to resonate was like drums, guitars, bass, and really loud, screamy vocals. I don't know why. That's what resonated. Billy Idol, I heard. Quiet Riot I heard Quiet Riot in '84. I mean, I'm 4 years old. And I'm like, this is amazing. So when we moved to the States, it was all like MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice. I'm just like, okay, where is this the stuff that I remember that I'm like, I'm kind of yearning for? Where's the guitars and drums and all the heavy shit? And then this was it. And then and I was like, oh, all right, so it's called hard rock. It's Guns N' Roses. And then there was that and then like sort of the floodgates opened at that point of heavy music. And also it like filtered out a lot of people in my life at the time. It was just like, oh, if you like Guns N' Roses and the foul-mouthed Axl Rose and all that, we don't want anything to do with you. And I'd be like, good, I don't want anything to do with you either.
I was just about to ask, how did you view that? Because it's sort of like, I think at that age, right, when middle school, high school age, it's this weird combination of wanting to stand out and be your own person, but also not be isolated, right? So it's like, I don't want to be you, but I also don't want to be just alone. I got to find my people. And I feel like, yeah, like you said, the music we listen to, the way we dress helps us identify who's our people.
Yeah, no, totally. And especially at that age, right? I mean, I was 11, 12 when GNR was when this song came out. I was like 11 years old, late middle school, I think. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was one of those things where I was okay. I was okay being myself in the way that, look, if Guns N' Roses is wrong, I don't want to be right. It was kind of one of those things. So it's like, and
that's got to be on a T-shirt, trademark. That's coming a T-shirt.
Write that down.
Yeah. I think that it was kind of a way to filter out certain people, and I never judged other people. And I was just like, dude, listen to whatever you listen to. This is the stuff that I like, and I just happened to get in touch with people that were also into that, and you just kind of make friends that way. Some people I knew that I wasn't an extreme either way. But it's just like, dude, it's on MTV. It's like the most popular band. It can't be that bad. I mean, come on, and then you realize, people that have really extreme views about this type of music, whether it's the lyrics or whatever else, or people from my part of the world, you realize, okay, look, if you're taking it's entertainment. If you're taking it that seriously, then again, it's you do you. I'm okay, enjoying the stuff that I like enjoying. So it made me happy. So that was it.
I think like such an interesting thing about that particular time, those like late 80s, early 90s, and sort of the advent of music videos was this like merge between music videos and movies that you don't really see anymore. So like if a song was on the score to a movie, that music video would have like a ton of clips from the movie. Music videos today seem to be more like detached from whatever possible score. And I remember watching the music video for this, and the CGI that was like coming of age with Terminator 2, you know, when the other robot melts into that like that metallic, I was like, what the fuck did they just, how did they do that? Right? Because a few years ago David and I watched Terminator 1 again just for kicks, and it was hilarious. So bad. Like the CGI, like it was terrible. But by the time Terminator 2 came out, like it was wicked impressive. And then put Guns N' Roses behind it, and it was just like one of those like epic blockbuster movie type with all the music and everything that comes with it. So it's hard to hate the song and not like, you know, associate it with the film that it's in.
And that music video in particular was amazing too, because Arnold's in the video. So there's like a storyline within the storyline, which is that so he shows up at a Guns N' Roses concert, you know, hunting down, you know, or protecting, depending on whatever, you know, the role is. Right. But he's hunting down the band basically, you know, throughout the song, and they've got like concert footage like interspersed, and then at the very end, there's a cameo where it's like Terminator, and he finds, what's the word? Yeah, basically he finds the band and he's sort of analyzing them, and you can see like his Terminator eye, you know, identifying Axl Rose and Slash and Matt Sorum, and there's like a cheeky factor as well. It was really just, you know, it was a good time, man. The 90s were great.
It was a good time. I think the kid in the movie was roughly like our age or a little older too, and kind of a punk, but a rebel, and like Linda Hamilton from a woman in movies perspective, how like strong she was and fit, and like this like fighter. It was all really badass.
It was epic,
if you ask me. All of it, music included.
My dad, so, you know, speaking of music in the household, so again, so he loved the movie, and it's like, Dad, it's got violence, like foul language and all this other stuff. He's like, yeah, but the music production was bloody amazing. When you hear the Harley Davidson, it goes from the right to the left. It is stereophonic. Loved it. You know, and he had the old.
Dad.
Oh man, he's still to this day. You know, gotta love him. He's an audiophile. He just loves, you know, the way music, and I think it's more even not even music, but sound. How sound travels, and you know, the bass has its place, and the trebles have their place, and the mids have their place. And so, I definitely got a lot of that super nerdy stuff from him. So,
That's awesome. When are we having your dad on the show then?
Oh, yeah. Say the word. I'll make some phone calls.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, you know, that whole discussion just, you know, illustrates how the power of music to kind of put us right back in a place, right? Just immediately before we're even aware of it, right? You hear the drums kick in on that song, and boom, you know exactly where you are, and all of that. You know, for this next song in question, you know, tell us a story about a time where, you know, a song was just intimately connected with a challenging time or a difficult situation.
Well, you know, I think I would say probably, you know, the typical immigrant story, which is that, you know, you come to America and this land of opportunity, and you have all these sort of, you know, expectations and anyway, I mean, the stuff that you think will happen ends up not happening, or there's challenges, and whether there's challenges with families and things like that. I had family members that passed away, and we had our own sort of internal struggles in finding your place and financial and the typical, again, immigrant stuff, working parents, and then for me, myself and my siblings, it's like the teen years, and you enter high school, and it's an awkward time. You're figuring out yourself, you're figuring out your sort of social group, and you're also figuring out that, well, not everyone likes Guns N' Roses. So around that time, the Chili Peppers were on their breakthrough was Blood Sugar Sex and Magic. I purposely tried to stay away from it because I knew that it was really, really popular. And but then right after that, their follow-up was with Dave Navarro on guitar. John Frusciante had left or was fired or whatever. And their next album was called One Hot Minute. And almost as an FU to everyone who liked the first album, I was just like, I'm going to really enjoy this album. And the song that really did it for me was Aeroplane. And for some reason, it's not their biggest song. It's not definitely not one of their like top 5, top 10 even, but I loved it. And that was always reminds me of that time.
Yeah. Let's take a listen, and we'll chat some more about the difficulties on the other side.
Yeah.
I can make it this up here, have no fear. I like pleasure spiked with pain, and music is my aeroplane. It's my aeroplane. Somber, sweet and sour Jane, and music is my aeroplane. It's my aeroplane. Pleasure spiked with pain. That motherfucker's always spiked with pain.
Yeah. I think that song works well for a potential like kind of theme song for, this podcast, right? Music is my aeroplane, right? We're talking about how it can take you somewhere. And so where does this song take you?
Yeah, I'm instantly transported, to the high school years. Those are they're always like sort of, I guess that's what coming of age is, right? So the high school years is coming of age. You're in this weird spot between you're a minor, so you're not really an adult. You're changing physically, we change, and there's a lot of in our household. I mean, education was always that was sort of the reason for coming to America, is like, you don't come here to screw around. Come here to to become something. It's a land of opportunity, and your opportunity lies by the way of you getting into a good college. So those types of. I don't think we ever used the word stress in the house, because it's like, what is stress? Make it happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I'll show you real stress, But yeah, so high school was difficult, and it was a difficult 4 years. And this song to me just kind of epitomizes that. I think I realized much later that, oh crap, yeah, my life is spiked with pain, and music is my airplane. Like, it's so simple. I don't even think I put it together at the time. But yeah, this was my favorite Chili Peppers album, still is. And the song just transports me to the 93 to 97 years.
Super cool. I love the Chili Peppers. It was funny you were talking about like not liking them because they were popular, or like their second album. And I remember also coming from an immigrant family, no cursing allowed in my house or anything, but "Suck My Kiss" off of of their first album. It felt such like a greedy, like indulgent pleasure to sing that song.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah,
and I still listen to so now I'm much more sort of I care less about the popularity contest or whatever. And I mean, just from a production standpoint, not to get super nerdy, but oh my God, Rick Rubin killed it on the like the drums. Chad Smith's drumming wouldn't be the same without Rick Rubin's production of that drumming. And yeah, I mean, the band was on fire, but I couldn't bring myself to admit that I really like, Under the Bridge and Give It Away, and like the video for Give It Away too. Oh my God. But then fast forward a couple years when One Hot Minute came out, it was slightly heavier, and then I realized that they have another guitarist. It's Dave Navarro, and he came from more of a rock school than a funk background, which is ironically the reason why they got rid of him. I was just like, man, I liked the heavier Chili Peppers, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I also remember thinking like, a lot of rock bands and, musicians that you follow are cool, right? They're famous. They do this thing. They create music for a living. But I remember feeling like the Chili Peppers in particular were just super cool. Like Anthony Kiedis and the way Flea would play. Like, I don't think I ever thought about the bass before, before I watched somebody like him, like tear it up on stage. And then Anthony Kiedis in Point Break.
Yes.
I can't not associate them. So I just thought like individually too, as people, they were all like just super interesting and cool. That West Coast thing that we don't get in South Florida.
Right. Yeah. That Southern California vibe, LA vibe. For sure. For sure.
I remember years later watching their, I think it was on VH1, that behind the music, one of the documentaries, and Flea going, dude, we were LA to the bone. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. You just kind of like, you look at them and you're like, yep. That is that for sure. For sure. I think it's so interesting with this song and where it places you, and kind of talking about the struggles of high school, and even with the Guns N' Roses side of like, we use music and things to kind of define our identity in ways. Who's my group? And inevitably that means who's not in my group, right? And that sort of division. And in a lot of ways, it's almost like, I feel like, the kind of one of the motivations behind doing this podcast is to kind of get away from the, well, if I like Rush, like I can't talk to you because you like Beyonce or something like that, right? And it's sort of, we grow up in that it's like, oh, if you like that, you're somehow, different than me. And it just feels so much more like there's more in common there. Like you may not like the Guns N' Roses, you may not like the Beyonce, but again, that experience, right? Everybody going through high school was experiencing that thing of like, what bands do you like? What music do you like? Are you into music? Or are you not really into music? Are you more into something else? And so, again, I think it's just another one of those examples where, adulthood is working out things from your childhood.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a South Florida thing or what, because I've definitely had conversations with other people, and when they talk about their high school years, they're exactly as you're saying, that if you're a fan of band A, then you by default are not fans of bands, B through Z or whatever the case might be, right? But I always found that, I think maybe, I don't know if it's South Florida thing, or if it was our school in particular. We went to Plantation High School, and we were the marching colonels. But I always thought that, I think that our population was generally really forgiving and open, because I remember being friends with people who really liked my kind of music, but also my best friends they appreciated what I liked, but they weren't like, as crazy about the same bands. They were into other Beastie Boys or, whatever else, the hip hop. And that was okay. But as an adult, I've had these same conversations with other people, and they describe their high school years kind of like you were saying, that no, if you were into, this band, then by default you were not into that other band, and you would get beat up or, whatever. So I don't know, I think maybe shout out to South Florida, because it was such a melting pot, and I know for a fact our school was very, very diverse.
And
I think
this is true.
Like, from you guys' interviews as well, it's like, Dave, I didn't realize you love hip hop as much as you did, just based on your 90s, references. Along with Rush, and that's okay. Yeah. And I think that's really sort of, it speaks a lot to where we grew up, and I'm really kind of, in hindsight, I'm really appreciative of it, and I'm glad that we were where we were. So, because a lot of people had it, super worse, and they had their sort of pigeonholed area.
Sure.
And, I don't think we were like that.
Yeah. You know what? That's bringing up for me, and we've had, for some reason, I've had a couple conversations this week about generations.
Yeah.
what generation we fall in. You know, my mom is actually visiting right now. We were explaining to her that, you know, she's a baby boomer, you know, that kind of stuff. Our kiddos Gen Z. And I was explaining to some other folks what a zennial is, that little micro generation of, what is it, David? 1970?
I think it's 1977 to 1982.
To 1982.
Birth years.
And our specific relationship with like analog versus technology and things like that. And it's almost making me wonder if it's a generational thing, that like we were being introduced to all kinds of new things at that coming of age time. Yeah. Grunge as a new genre of music, technology, CDs, like maybe we were just, as a consequence of that environment, more open-minded. I went to a Catholic high school, so not a large school like Plantation ones. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas, but you know, even there too, not a lot of like pigeonholing around music. Our parties were pretty diverse. Like, yeah, no, it was a little more open-minded than I think I hear about other generations. I'm wondering if it's that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we definitely have access to more information than anybody else, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's like that Forrest Gump reference, right? It's like, I don't know if it's destiny or if it's intentional. But then you know, the Forrest Gump answers that it's a little bit of both. It's like, I don't know why things happen the way they do, but you know, it could be a mix of you know, intent and also just completely random stuff. Why did the feather fall right on his shoe? Oh my God, so many 92 references.
putting us right there in the zennial
yeah,
bracket.
Zillennial.
Yeah, Gen X and millennial together. Gen it's X the overlap.
Yeah.
So speaking of perspectives and different perspectives and accepting them and embracing them or whatnot, you know, what is a song that, you know, exposed you to just a new perspective?
So from a musical perspective, when I heard, I was into sort of heavy-ish music. I wasn't into like the extreme stuff and all that, you know, sort of church burning, satanic, whatever. But I liked heavy music, but something was missing. And when I heard Typo Negative, that changed everything from a musical nerding out perspective, because their songs were long and they were dark, which is essential, but also they went places. I understood what a musical composition is. It's like you start here and it goes there and and ends somewhere else. And their iconic, you know, Black Number One was my introduction to that whole world.
Nice. Let's listen in.
Cigarettes and her object funeral for which she's dressed. Her perfume smells like burning leaves. Every day
Yep.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. You just hear his voice and it's just like I don't know how you hear that voice and aren't just like, whoa, like that's something.
Yeah. You know, again, back in the days of MTV, if you watch the music video for this song, it was like, okay, whoa, like time out, right? It was like, okay, this is just something completely different. and it's dark and it's haunting and it's the music video is black and white. There's all this like vampire shit going on. Long black hair on like the men and the women, and just darkness. But then there's melody and there's keyboards and there's like harpsichords and there's cobwebs in the video, and it just, dude, it just, life changing. I was 13 at the time, so I couldn't buy the album because it had explicit, content in it. So yeah, I know. So I don't know, somehow I got a copy of it, and then you realize, oh my God, there's this thing called a radio edit, which takes an 11-minute song, and then you kind of summarize it back down to like 3.5, 4 minutes. So I started nerding out on that stuff. I'm like, wow, you're allowed to have different versions of a song? How is this possible? And then I remember someone mentioned, oh, well, the Doors, they're Light My Fire is like a 12-minute song. And they basically told the radio stations that if you don't play the full song, you have to play the full song or nothing. And obviously Light My Fire is one of the biggest, that's one of the most popular songs ever. And, it just completely changed my perspective on music. What is possible in a musical composition? For many, many years, until so Peter Steele, the singer, died a few years ago, and that was effectively the end of Type O. But yeah, man, love what they did there, and they're still I think people hear them now and go, oh wow, how did I miss this? They're really they're like an iconic band, and for me it just the whole composition aspect and that's what kind of inspired me to start paying attention to production and writing, and it's what wanted me to start writing my own stuff. I'm like, well, if they can do it, so can I. I'll at least try it. Because it's not Metallica, it's not that difficult to play their stuff, but
right.
but it's there's more atmosphere to it, so it was cool.
I think so. If you haven't watched any of our other episodes, I'm not the heavy metal fan of the three of the hosts, although I strongly think now that you two are going to like steer me in that direction over time.
We have plans.
I'm sure you do. So in researching your episode, Raza, I watched the music video. And I was blown away by the details of it all. Like his voice, I think, first of all, the band name, right? Like clear reference to blood, and then the video itself. Like if there was an audio personification of like Dracula, it is his voice. But I was also probably like Vampire Victim. I was like drawn in. I'm like staring. The sound with which they engineered it. You can hear him breathing. You can hear him like taking breaths and opening his mouth. Like it just feels like a really primal experience listening to it. And I was like fully sucked in to the whole song. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you appreciated all of that, and obviously, it's when you take a step back and look at it as entertainment, all of that is intentional, right? They were purposely playing up that imagery, and full disclosure, like the guy, he was like 6'7", fangs, and he had the voice. But then you realize, oh God, like these are like four dudes from Brooklyn. It's it's like I've hung out with their drummer Johnny, and I've met their keyboard player in passing. Just I'm a complete fanboy to this day. I love this band. I love what they did. Yeah. And it was just, but Peter, he's a brilliant composer of music. The lyrics were amazing. I remember I remember watching an interview with, I think it was Trent Reznor, and someone asked, "Hey, so what are your goals for the lyrics for the next album, whichever album they were talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, my goal is to not start the next song with the word I, like I did this, I am this, I'm feeling down, I'm whatever it is." And I don't think any of Typo's lyrics started with the word I. It's always either a story or it's like they put things into it's like relatable, and they there's like a scene that happens. There's a lot of she's, so there's a lot of songs about a she, but or several, she's, but yeah. So it was just I love that there was a lot of thought put into it, and then it's great to hear that you were able to catch on to this, and you're watching the Black Number One video literally 30 years after it was made. I mean, this song came out in I think 93 or so. And yeah, no, these guys were epic, and I miss them dearly.
Yeah, and the video doesn't have like, it's not a multi-million-dollar production. It's black and white. Is very, very simple. Yeah. But his voice is just like so haunting. Like it makes the hairs on your arms kind of you look like you're like witnessing this like vampiric predatory like circumstance, and you're like, should I be watching
and
this?
Yet you're drawn
I don't
to
know,
it.
like right, but I can't stop watching at the same time. Super cool.
Which like you said, Carolina, it's like he very much personifies what you think of when you think of Dracula, right? Every time Dracula is portrayed, it's in this enticing way. He's like evil, or dark, whatever word you want to describe it, but you can't get away from him, right? You're drawn into it in this way. And so yeah, I feel the same way about it. You're just like, whoa.
And the funny thing is that these guys are actually hilarious. Like if you listen to their interviews, it's completely, it's like, obviously it's New York humor and deadpan delivery, but completely self-deprecating, completely normal, downplayed their own success, and honestly, like I was in full like fanboy mode for many years, especially like in high school and college and stuff. But it was cool to see a band operate in that way. It's like, dude, don't take yourself that seriously, because the other side was, then you had like the Marilyn Mansons and some of the other folks that started believing their own narrative. And it's just like, do your job, go play a show, do it well, and then go home. And that's, to me, they're one of those bands that you really just they kept it real, like New York real. And I love that. So
I love that you bring up like the fact that in this is a persona, their on stage sort of presence, or their musical presence, but in like real life they're like funny and don't take each other themselves too seriously. Because I could not help, while listening to his voice and sort of the subject matter of the music video and everything, to think about the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and the Dracula inspired rock puppet opera that Jason Segel's character makes, but the voice that he sings in the rock opera is kind of like similar. And I ever meet Jason Segel, hint hint, I'd love to ask if like that was an inspiration for that, because it was eerily, I could like see it in the back of my mind when I was listening to the song.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking of Count from Sesame Street, because I remember you had a Sesame Street reference.
Count.
I want to suck your blood. 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Totally.
And so like at the same time while I was watching the music video, but now you're telling me this is like 30 years ago, I'm like, are you poking fun at like but no, this looks like,
dude,
what they are trying to pair. It just,
yeah.
I guess I would just tell people to go watch the video.
That's the OG. Yeah,
it was an experience.
Definitely. I think before we move on to our next song, just one final thing in kind of bringing this sort of goth music and then grunge, and sort of you have two movies. You have The Crow and you have Singles, right, that come out.
Singles.
And it's like The Crow is like your Halloween kind of goth, that whole, it's dark, it rains the whole time. There's even a song in there that's like, it can't rain all the time. and that vibe, and then you have singles, which is like straight up grunge Seattle. I mean, Pearl Jam and are in it, you know, and whatnot, and so it's just interesting. I don't even have a take because I appreciate both of them. I really dug both. It was tough to kind of like, I'm kind of in the middle on them, probably leaning a little bit more to the grunge side of things, but I just think it's so interesting to see. We're talking about sort of how you can define your place and your people and stuff, and I feel like that's a question you could ask someone. It's like The Crow or singles, which is your vibe, you know, or something like that. So
I'm definitely Crow all the
singles.
way.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, Raza, you're definitely Crow. Carolina,
Crow,
you're
man.
definitely singles, and I'm right there in the middle. So we've got it all represented.
Well, here, let's split the difference. So speaking of typo, around that time, that movie I Know What You Did Last Summer came out.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The opening sequence opens with a typo cover of another song, but the voice and the guitars and everything is there. So I went to go see that movie just for that, just to enjoy, you know, their the track, and that may have shed a little tear, like, my boys made it.
Yay!
Yeah,
You made it in a movie.
yeah,
That's awesome.
That's great. So, you know, we talked about how music can put us to a specific point. It's there when we struggle. It can give us a new perspective. But music can also be there when just things are great, right? And it's just kind of this soundtrack that attaches to these great moments. And so, you know, tell us about a song that is part of one of those perfect moments for you.
Yeah. I was trying to think, you know, what's I mean, you can define, you know, perfect moments so many different ways, but to me, yeah. So there's the high school years, there's the college years, which is basically a blur, and then and then I went to law school in Houston, got engaged, and I remember loving it. I remember, you know, my fiance at the time, now my wife, we've been married for just shy of 17 years now. But
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I remember being in Houston, either having just finished law school or just being on the tail end of it. And it seemed like at the time that, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen in the next few years, you know, building a career and doing this law thing and, you know, starting a family, et cetera, all the promise of all those things that, you know, as an immigrant, you think about, were like just right there at the cusp. And those, I
did
always,
it, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. So I always kind of, our Houston years always remind me of that. Everything that's possible. The city was amazing. It was, so, you know, you guys know, so we you know, grew up in South Florida, went to college in a small college town. Houston is a proper city. I mean, it is, you know, skyscrapers and heat and wealth and crime and everything. You know, it's and we made, you know, we had a blast there. We had a really good time. We loved the city, still do actually. Anyway, so in those, around that time, I was introduced, I don't know how, but maybe on the radio, or it may have been through my wife, but she said, "Hey, listen to this song. It's a band called Maroon 5." And my first instinct was, Maroon 5? What? But the song and the beat just, it was undeniably hooky. And I was like, all right, you know, this is it. So, yeah.
All right, let's listen in.
Years later, I realized this is like the ultimate fuck you song. And I'm like, wait, and I'm sure I asked my wife, I'm like, why would you introduce me to this? What are you trying to say, baby? What are you trying to say? So, and I'm one of those people, like, I always pay attention to the lyrics, but for me, the music, the vibe of this song reminds me of just things seemingly being perfect. And driving around, enjoying the skyline in Houston, having ridiculous, curries and Thai food and the best tacos, ever, because come on, man, Houston has the best tacos. What are you talking about? Yeah, just things seem to be perfect, and this song to me encapsulates that time.
So fun. Like Maroon 5 is just fun. And I think it's funny the way you kind of teed it up, that like it was like presented to you and you're like, come on, like not Maroon 5. If you I think as a lover of music, and we just came off of like Typo Negative, right? So like dark, deep, introspective, like all this kind of music, and then you find yourself like bopping to Maroon 5. It reminds me of, I don't know if you can help me, David. It was an episode of The Office, where the character Angela, who's just like a curmudgeon, like hates everything. Where were they? And there was like some sort of party that she did not want to go to, but she ended up digging the music, and the camera pans down to her foot, and she's kind of like
she's
actually having a good time on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the Cafe Disco episode after Michael Scott Paper Company fails, and they have the thing down there, and she's kind of sitting there, and she wants to clean up, and Michael Scott's like, no, this is a party, you gotta have fun. She's like, why wouldn't you let me have any fun? That's what you want to do. But yeah, then she's sitting there, and she starts, foot starts going. Yeah,
that's what it makes me think about, like this like reluctance to the music, but then you're like, damn it, it's catchy. Like I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, no, the music definitely got me. I love, and it's still to this day. Like again, I'm transported back to the drum beat, your four on the floor, and yeah. We ended up seeing Maroon 5 actually. So every year Houston has a rodeo, the Houston Rodeo, but it's not just a rodeo. It's like. It's like, I think, like a week-long festival, and they have, like Beyonce's played the rodeo, and Alicia Keys has played the rodeo, and it's a massive like festival, music, food, all things, Texan and Houston and everything. And so anyway, so around that year, I'm sure because of the song, we ended up going to the Houston Rodeo, and I loved it. We had such a good time, and Maroon 5 was the main act. And I'll never forget Adam Levine. He's like, well, y'all, obviously he's from California. He does not have a Texas accent.
I was like, y'all.
Yeah, y'all. Okay. I even got me a belt buckle. And he did like this weird like shimmy thing with his belt buckle.
Oh, God.
And I was like, oh, I fucking hate Maroon 5. But damn it, that song is great. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it's
times.
Like, I think there's a lot of music out there for folks that have this quality to it where you secretly like it, but you don't want to admit to people you like it. It's kind of like what they say about riding a scooter. They're a lot of fun, but you don't want your friends to see you on it. Like I'm going to jam out to this, but I don't want anybody to know. And I think I think that's a disservice, because it's, again, going to that thing of like being genuine and being real and just trying to like set up who we are. And it's like, like you said, the Nickelback hatred and stuff, that's just like, that's become an identity, right? To like, if you somehow hate on Nickelback, that makes you like some, music guru or something like that. And it's like, no, because you can like music for different reasons, right? Music can serve different parts of you. Like I'm a drummer. I care about rhythm and stuff. I'm into Rush and Tool and Dream Theater and these bands that like, every other, moment, the time signature's changing and things. But I can also jam out to a, 4/4 pop song and just be like, this is great. LMFAO is a great example of that. Love the group, right? Because it's just fun. It's just party fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually one of the great advantages of things like Apple Music and Spotify is that they have the lyrics, and the lyrics actually, they're like connected to the song, so they'll move as it's almost like like
karaoke.
Yeah, like a teleprompter type thing. And anyway, many years later, I was that song was playing, and I'm like, let me just listen to the, check out the lyrics and stuff. I'm like, I mean, the lyrics are brilliant. Like, it's undeniable. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense that so many people like them and likes the band, and I don't like dislike them. And I was actually like kicking myself because I was just like, God, I mean, like, the shit is really, like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant writing. And just because it's not heavy doesn't mean that it can't be good and like artistic. It really is. There's really good artistic value to the song and the lyrics. And I don't see myself being like a lifelong Maroon 5 fan, but I get it. I understand it, and I get it. I mean, I appreciate it. So yeah, I can say that now as as someone in their mid 40s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of the time period you discuss, this like adolescence and even like early adulthood, you're trying to like, I don't know, position yourself in the world, how you're perceived. And it can feel like when, you're still developing, that like every little thing you do is going to like weigh heavily on how people perceive you. And I think as we get older and they say, you start to give less fucks about things, right? You realize that like, I need to be more silly. I need to just like things because they're fun. Doesn't mean anything about me, but I often say we're just taller children, right? We're all still like that kid in middle school looking for that, place to sit and lunch with other people and make friends. But we end up taking a lot of it too seriously.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Moving on, song 5. So, sometimes music can be so powerful that it reminds us of something and we struggle with it. So, tell us about a song that, brings up, difficult memories, or, you may have to turn off when you listen to it.
Yeah. So, if Maroon 5 represents all the promise and the potential, the next song represents basically that everything is fucked. And yeah, fast forward a couple of years later, basically, from a career perspective, I was, it was in the toilet. Things were going pretty bad. We had moved around a bit, had a few struggles, had some amazing, our kids were born, and but it wasn't easy. Thankfully, like, health and everything was fine. But yeah, just from a professional standpoint, it was a really, really difficult time, and figuring out your stuff. The economy had collapsed around 2008-9 or so. And you guys all know that, the legal profession was basically destroyed at that point, and there was no jobs or anything like that. So, all of the struggle of trying to become someone, that payoff basically wasn't happening. And it was just a very, very difficult time. So anyway, around that time, we moved to DC area, Virginia, and it was around 2013. And this song represents that, all that, the sort of the best of times and also the worst of times. So yeah.
Nice. And that was Foster the People, Helena Beat. Yeah. This is one of those songs, like, I'm so appreciative for, being able to do this podcast and have these conversations, because, I know the song, right? Like, the second I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, heard that song a bunch of times, know it. but I've never paid attention to it, right? And so for, being that it was, one of your songs, I, and loading it up, getting it ready, I paid attention to the lyrics, right? And I was like so just, I don't want to say surprised, but pleasantly like, oh my God, this song, there's like, because it's got this kind of like happy feel to it, right? And so it's a little bit of prejudice on my side. It's like, oh, that must just be about, bubble gum and lollipops or something like that, and it's like, no, it's about like the line, like, I don't even want to get out of bed. Those days you don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate it for that, just being able to, learn a song a little deeper.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think one of the things we talked about was, which song do you have a hard time getting through, and that this is certainly, one of those songs, which is again, thankfully there's never been health related things, knock on wood, but yeah, it was just a very, very difficult time. It was like everything was available to you because we moved, like I said, we moved to just outside of DC, and there's all of this sort of knowledge and academic influence and just influence in general. Like it's amazing. You meet amazing people doing amazing things, and you realize how hard people work to become someone, and you realize how like what it takes, and then you also realize, at least at the time, it's not possible. It's like DC is great, but this is not the right moment for me, in that space. Like, it's like that old saying of, you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at once. And so kind of going through the struggles of that, and realizing that, what, this is just, some things are just not possible. They might happen at another time, but right now is not the time. And then you're kind of faced with it. You have to process it. You have to struggle with it. You have to sort of, beat yourself up over it and cry over it. And then but you also have to, get your shit together and come up with whatever the next plan is to survive and kind of, get out of that struggle. But yeah, so there's a time period around 2013, 2014, where things were, you meet really, really great people, and you see what all is possible, and then you also realize what's just not possible. Yeah, so this song kind of represents that, and yeah. And sometimes you just have to hit skip and go on to the next song.
100%.
Yeah.
I also was not aware of the lyrics to this song. Like, I have the melody of like their voice. It's hard to figure out what words they're saying. So I tend to just kind of like dance to the song, like it's like got a good upbeat, rhythm or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty heavy, the lyrics, but like really hard time and how to like keep that forward momentum, when life like knocks you down. I know for us, we were in the DC area too, and it does feel like there's a lot of promise. There's so many people moving and shaking and doing, and like you feel like you got put on like the super fast conveyor belt and you got to keep up. And I think similarly for us, we felt it was really hard. And then you get to like those times in your life where you're trying to do something for yourself and all that stuff, but you're also like a parent, and you start to lose community and friendships because you're in that grind. There's like these years of your life where you're just in this grind all the time, it feels like.
Yeah, the grind is real, man. Especially in DC, the struggle is real. And I mean, obviously, fast forward 10 years later, I'm back in DC, and squarely a part of the grind, and also doing really, really fun things like this podcast. Yeah, it's DC is one of those places where anything is possible. But it's also one of those places where if you fall, like it will test you, and it will knock you down, and it's one of those places where you can you really start to figure out, what's important, but also for me, like survival skills, like, like people that do survive in DC. And I think that's true of me, any, I mean, DC happens to be my sort of big city, example, but it is true of, I think, New York, LA, any of these bigger cities. But if you can survive, I can guarantee you that there's a lot of hard lessons that people have gone through in order to survive, because you realize that, the people that have made it on the other side of a struggle, like the shit that they went through, it could be anything. It's a lot. There's a lot of hard work, a lot of luck, a lot of opportunity, a lot of preparation, and sometimes you do have to take a step back and kind of regroup, recollect, plan out your stuff. I was never a planner. I became one in the last 10 years since this song. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things that are possible. And yeah, sometimes you have to just kind of step back, go back to Florida, and then figure out your shit, and then come back to DC. So,
well, yeah, because I think so much of when we talk about like career and success and even survival, there's a lot of this like grit to like suck it up and keep going. And, and we don't often talk about like survival is also knowing when to let go and when to take that step back, like you're saying, and regroup and say, this is not for me in this moment or season of my life. So,
yeah.
And like every song on this podcast, the fact that this puts you right back there is always super interesting, that a song can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think any song can top your example, Carolina. So,
well, I mean,
and if you want to hear that song, go check out episode 2 of our podcast and hear Carolina's songs.
Yeah. I think the connecting tie there can be grief, right? And grief comes from a lot of different losses. It can be physical death and illness and all kinds of things, but it can also be the grief and loss of the life you were planning for or aspiring to, or we dig our heels into the plans we have for life, and then life says, "Hold my beer, let me throw you a shit ton of curveballs," right? And then you're like, "Oh God, I gotta figure this out now."
Yeah. So Raza, I really appreciate the phrase you said of you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at once, because it just, so when you said it, I knew exactly what you meant, having gone through similar things of like committing to something. In my case, it was, a PhD and, professor land and that, you can have whatever you want kind of things, but there's going to be certain things you have to sacrifice. And it's kind of like, are you willing to sacrifice those things? And I think for a lot of us, we realize at some point of, no, I'm not willing to sacrifice family, my health, whatever it is for this thing I've committed to. And yeah, like Carolina, like you said, there's definitely a grieving process when that happens, right? Of like, where I was committed for, where I thought I was going, the life I thought I was going to have, where, the specific way it was going to work is not the case. And I've got to rethink what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think people realize, I mean, it's, to each their own, but I think at least for the three of us, it seems like it's kind of the whole premise of this podcast is that, significant events in your life, whether they're happy or sad or kind of, in this case, sort of a grieving process, it's attached to music. It's attached to a song or a few songs or whatever. And I mean, in my case, like we mentioned Chili Peppers a little while ago, that it's when you have these aha moments of, wow, other people felt the same way and other people feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to, in a nice, package known as a song, put those sort of feelings and things together and put it out there in the universe. And you realize that, oh, wow, there are other people that feel the same way. It's such a, on the surface, it's such a sort of mundane sounding phrase, but it really does help,
Yeah.
And yeah, for a lot of people, music is the thing that saves them, gets them out of that moment and say, you know what, it'll be okay. And that's nothing to take away from sort of mental health struggles and things like that, just completely as a sidestep, but just for your little pitfalls and things like that. Sometimes, just a good song just kind of makes it, it's like a warm hug. It just makes it better.
I would even say with the mental health, like a song might not be able to heal you from it entirely, right? You might need therapy, medication, whatever it might be. But even with mental health, hearing a song that is talking about the struggles of any type of mental health struggle, whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, or something like that, that helps too, in that way of just like, oh, wow, I'm not the only one going through this. Like, just knowing the song doesn't fix it. But again, that feeling like you're not the only one going through it. Right. And that's really what it's, art makes life bearable. Really, right? Because it's like we're in this existence that makes no sense, right? We're electricity running through fucking meat suits that we're walking around in. Everything we do is about trying to keep ourselves alive, right? We eat, we do all these things to keep ourselves alive, but at the end, it's a failed attempt, right? We at the end, we will all fail at it, right? And so that's scary as shit, right? And so like having music kind of, okay, I'm at least not alone in this. I'm not alone in these fears, these anxieties, these sadness, this breakup, this struggle. It just takes away a little bit of that suffering. Yeah.
It almost sounds like, when people's, I hate to, we might have to edit this out, but I'm just going to say it for right now. People attempt suicide. Well, it's almost, your example sounds like attempt life. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing is, you're doing things to attempt to keep yourself alive.
Yeah. That like tie you back or ground you back. I think for me, one of the things that comes up that music is so helpful with when it comes to grief and loss and all of that is when you can't find the words. When we think about like the struggles you go through in adolescence or even childhood, there's a lot around depression and PTSD and even like LGBTQ youth and stuff who are struggling to like put to words the angst or the pain or whatever it is they're feeling. And then to have somebody do that in this creative way. One, exactly, Raza, feels like a hug. Singing to things can almost feel like, I don't know, like a cathartic alternative to crying, when you sing. And it just helps like paint that story that you couldn't like put a word to.
Yeah. It's a connection. We're looking for connection. And it's funny how sometimes it's completely random, like a song on the radio. It's completely random. And might have you in tears.
Right. The song found you in this weird way. Yeah.
I like the phrase of attempt life.
Trademark.
In that sense of like, trademark
Write
t-shirt. Because in that way of just, as someone who from PTSD and things has struggled with the suicidal thoughts and things like that, and kind of, understanding it more personally that way. And now sort of healing from it and in some ways getting better. It feels exactly what I'm doing right now in the, like, even the podcast and trying to get out there and doing these things. It feels like I'm attempting life again. Like I was in this mode where I was not so, excited about life and all these, all of that. And it just felt like this struggle all the time. And you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And now it feels like, it's like, let's go attempt some life. Just go do it. We're going to be gone anyway. So just like we said at a lot of times, just have fun. Have some fun with it. Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. All right. Moving along, our last song. And so We talked about that, everything's perfect. This is great, on the precipice of all these amazing things. And then okay, life dealt the blow, and it was a struggle. And so with this last song, tell us about a song or a piece of music that is part of a weighty transition for you, when there was a before time and an after time.
Yeah. There's definitely been lots of transitions in my life, but I think the most significant one is becoming a parent. I'm eternally grateful for our two awesome kids, who are both they're both in their teens now, but yeah. Anyway, so this is going to be a little bit of a shameless plug, but you guys mentioned this Solamente project in my intro, and I thought that I would kind of shamelessly plug my favorite track off of one of the albums, and it basically, so it's called The Offspring, and it's about my kids, and I guess we'll talk about it on the other side.
Yeah, talk about on the flip side. And if you can't plug your own music on your own podcast, what can you do, right?
I know. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're driven to create music as the story, more power to you. That's amazing.
I appreciate it. I pre-appreciate it.
There you go.
All right, let's take a listen. Solamente, The Offspring.
Yeah, I was
love it.
I was kind of proud of I patted myself on the back a little bit, like when I was writing the words for this, because I had no idea. I mean, I wrote all the music and stuff way before the lyrics. And actually, once pandemic happened, we had all this time, and I was like, you know what? The one thing I want to do is put out my this is actually my second album. And yeah, for some reason, some of the words seemed to resonate, and then it just, the lyrical content morphed into this thing about just kids. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. I have a voice. Might as well use it, like the way Tobias Forge from Ghost said once. And something about it just seemed like the words seemed to start. The words that I was putting together, that's the theme that just came out. And I think the part you guys heard there about, if you feel like nothing's right, I'll be there for you. If you just want to run and hide, I'll be right there with you. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to expand on that. So basically, out of that little chorus line, the whole thing. I played the song for someone once, and they're like, "Man, I have no idea what this thing is about." I'm like, "The title is The Offspring." I know, it's like some scientific project gone bad. I'm like, dude, it's about my kids. I just wanted to leave them a note, when I'm gone, there's maybe one thing that they'll know how I feel about them, and being responsible as a parent and a dad, things like that. So yeah,
I love that so much.
Thank you.
Oh
yeah.
I mean, so much of the lyrics of music can be about, love or struggle or war or political topics or, personal struggles, addiction, all these kinds of things, right? I don't feel like I hear as much about parenting, which is talk about a weighty transition that nobody prepares you for.
Yeah.
The most epic responsibility of trying to create a good human intergenerational things that you have to come to terms with about like your own childhood, what kind of parent you want to be, how you want to be. Like, man, that's parenthood is one of the most ultimate life struggles and like challenges and adventures that one embarks upon. So one, I love that the song, and I guess the album as a whole is like a dedication to that journey. It's really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it was the funny part for me was like, again, most of the music was done. And I hear this is how the pros do it as well, which is, you write, the band gets together and writes all the music and stuff. And then, at the very end, the singer comes in and kind of, puts pen to paper. And so, yes, I had no idea. Some people have asked me, hey, did you write a song about your kids? I'm like, no, I mean, the music was there. But the lyrics were, I think, a creation of the pandemic and what we were going through. And, the impact of the pandemic on our kids, and at this time, everyone was, kids were going to school online and laptops and things like that. So it was a topic that was going around, and for some reason, it seemed to make sense. So, yeah, it was fun. It was fun to write it, and then it was fun to write the lyrics, and yeah, it's kind of an ode to motherhood too, by the way. Speaking to another mom here, which was, I think the first line is something like, an act of love brought you two into this world. And it's just like, no, like the act of giving birth is the ultimate act of love. And we're not talking about the other act of love. But
Yes, and
yeah. But yeah, it's just like,
let me tell you about the night we made you.
I don't know if I want to hear that song, Dad.
No kid wants to hear that story.
Well, there's plenty. I think there's plenty written on that already.
Yeah, Neil Peart had his most epic solo. But yeah,
goodness.
so it's fun to be a dad. It's a gift, and I think it's the ultimate gift from the mother as well, mothers as well. So yeah. Covered all the bases, basically.
Yeah. No, I love that you selected this song to put out there. You call it a shameless plug. I think it's it's exactly what we want to hear, right? If we didn't have this song on here, a piece of you and your story and your life is missing, right? And so I very much appreciate having this on here, and really, we focused on how the transition is becoming a parent and the focus on your children, but based on the previous couple songs we've done and sort of following this story, I also am happy to have this as our last song in this way, because it also shows your for lack of a better word, actualization, right? You are, hey, I was doing this thing. I'm trying to succeed for my family, and we moved here to succeed, and I'm trying to do this, and then it's struggle and it doesn't work, and I'm not sure, and all these ups and downs. And then here's this part of like, well, I know no matter what else I'm doing, this is something that's in me that I want to get out, right? And so I think all too often, so many of us have those things, and we just tell ourselves, no, I don't have the time. I don't have the this. I don't have the whatever. No one's going to listen. No one's going to care. Everyone's going to laugh at me, whatever it might be. And you put it out there. You went and made it and put it out there. And, that's just so great. And it's just so inspiring to hear in a most basic sense of just, no, make stuff. If you have it in there, put it out there. Do it. The world, society, and everything is going to try and take that away from us, right? And just make us, work the job and serve our purpose in that way. And yeah, we gotta make beautiful things. So thank you for this beautiful thing.
And no, thank you guys. I mean, thanks for letting me share this. And it's great. I really appreciate that. I appreciate sharing this with you guys. I mean, this is, and now everybody knows.
That's right. And you can find links to Solamente music in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
definitely check it out.
I love that this is the last song too. Like in talking about just the ups and downs and roller coasters of life. It the fact that it ends with something you created makes me think of that Jurassic Park quote, right? Like life finds a way.
Oh, wow.
And to create, right? As humans, I'm a former art teacher as well, and I firmly believe that like humans are drawn to instinctively create art and things. Those are the stories we leave behind. And I'm not going to cry, but the idea that your kids have a song or an album that you wrote for them long after, we're all gone, like, not going to cry. Wrap it up, David.
Carolina, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that it hit you the way that it did. And so yeah, from one parent to another,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so in wrapping up, we're sort of already starting to do it, but we normally, wrap it up by saying, okay, we've listened to these 6 songs, you've told these stories, how does it feel now looking back on everything and thinking of where you're going forward? How does it feel to hear all these songs?
Yeah. No, it's I feel good. I feel I feel like I'm not someone who shares things very easily, and I feel like I've put a lot of things out there into the universe, and some of it might be a little unnerving. Some of it is, it's like, do people really want to know about me? It's like, you always have that running thought,
Right?
But on the other hand,
who's
it's
going to
like,
care about this?
Exactly. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what? I know that it was good. It was good that I feel good about it. I feel good that I'm able to share it, even if it's just between the 3 of us. If some other, people get some joy out of it, that's even better. But I think I'm content in that it's out there. Like, I've done my part. I'm super excited to hear other people's stories as well. And again, I've been the idea of this podcast has inspired me. And again, your tagline of, we're not going to make our guests do anything that we're ourselves not doing. So I'm like, I'm doing it for the good of things, for the good of our guests, for the good of the podcast. I'm a team player. And any little bit of nervousness on my part or anxiety is like, let's do it. Let me attempt it, and let's just see what happens. So I'm glad to put it out there. I'm glad you guys, some of this stuff resonated with you guys. I really enjoyed hearing your takeaways as well. And yeah, super excited.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like, we talked about these songs that spoke to you in some way, right? We talked about the power of music in that way to, like, oh, I'm not alone, right? And this gets me. And I think that's kind of, what we're doing here in that sense. You can't know who it might affect, but someone might hear something and it speaks to them, right? And they don't feel alone. And so, yeah. So
cool.
Come on the podcast. If we invite you, come on. It's an experience for sure.
It's a judgment-free
and I think going back to, that's right, judgment-free zone. We're not talking about, nope, let me tell you why such and such band is better than Guns N' Roses. That's not what we're trying to do here. And I think kind of like, I appreciate what you just said too about, like, I actually enjoyed the process of telling my story, and whatever anxiety or, who wants to hear this and stuff. I think that's maybe one of the reasons why conversations about music and stuff normally fall down to that easier, let me tell you why your band isn't as good as my band, right? Because that's safer, right? You're not opening up. I don't have to tell you why Rush speaks to me, or I don't have to tell you about why Typo Negative changed my life. I don't have to tell you about how Alicia Keys just, wrecks me. And so but we know that conversation isn't great. It isolates us, if and stuff. And so I appreciate that in that way of sort of, like we said, we're leading from the front, not asking our guests to do anything we wouldn't do.
Yeah.
It's that way of changing the conversation to say, like, no, let's kind of try and have more of these conversations. Let's be a little bit more vulnerable. Let's open up a little bit with each other.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we're getting at life stories, but through music. Right. And I think if you were to have a conversation with somebody and you were like, tell me your life story, like, I think it'd be a way different story than the 6 songs I shared told. It's just a completely different perspective and angle to your life story. Mine has a lot not reflected in those 6 songs, but the 6 songs give you like the ups and downs and the nuances, and like I think more of me and my soul and who I am than a chronological order of like, I was born here, then we did this, then that happened, then those kinds of things. And so as somebody who just did this right in our 2nd episode, like I was nervous too, but like what a cool way to share my story that wasn't in what you would think a traditional way would be. Nice.
All right. So before we jump off, real quick lightning round. What's your first, your last, and your best concert?
Okay. So my first, I'm going to take you guys all the way back to 1989. This was in Pakistan, and there was a band called Vital Signs. Anyone who's of Pakistani descent who lived, I know my family will know this reference right off the bat. But yeah, Vital Signs. They were a Pakistani pop band, and they put on a show. One of my uncles and aunties took me and my sister. We sat up front row. They had no drummer. They had a drum machine, the keyboards. It was very synthy, poppy, but they had a live guitarist, and I sat like directly square in front of him. And during one of his guitar solos, he like winked at me because it was like me and my cuddly little sister sitting there. He's like, I see you guys, yeah. So that was my first. It was great. Last concert was a band called Ailstorm. I kid you not, they're a sort of a pirate metal band. I consider myself like a connoisseur of metal. I have never heard of these guys before, but the show was ridiculous. Oh my God.
Wait, like pirate, like our...
Yeah. And there's songs about, hey, we get drunk on the rum and yo ho ho mateys, and then really fast drums, and yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So like Viking metal, but pirate metal.
Pirate metal, yes.
So we're not singing about Vikings and gods and everything. We're pirates.
We're pirates.
Wow.
Yeah, we're invading, the Caribbean islands, and we're finding, treasure chests, and getting pissed drunk on rum, and and one-eyed parrots and all this stuff. Yes, pirate metal.
What's the name of this band?
Ailstorm. So like ale, like
like
ALE,
ale, like
yeah,
mead, or yeah.
And it was for one of my buddies'
Write
birthdays.
that down for later.
Thank you, Ben. And it was insanity, but it was a great time. Really a fantastic drummer, by the way. Like, blast beats and shit. I'm like, what's going on?
That's awesome.
And then best concert was Typo Negative, and I'll never forget the date because it was on my 17th birthday in Fort Lauderdale, like a month before high school graduation, and Typo was at their peak. This was the October Rust tour. The theater in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I went with my sister and a couple other friends, and yeah, best concert, and probably best concert, forever, ever, and ever into perpetuity. So yeah, those are my
best
three.
Concert for all time.
For all time, because Typo's gone, dude. Like, it's been there.
Right. There's no
the final nail in the coffin. So yeah.
All right. Well, Raza, thank you for opening up to us and our audience. Like we said, we've tried to lead from the front with this, and so thank you for that. In just wrapping up in the few minutes we have left, tell us what you've got going on that people might be interested in, or how they can connect with you, or whatever you want to share with folks.
Oh yeah. Well, again, thank you guys. Right. I mean, again, this was sort of an experiment that I had never imagined myself doing ever, and it's such a cool idea. So yeah, love doing it. Really looking forward to how this thing plays out. Yeah, I'm on Insta. I'm on Threads. It's Raza is my name. Other than that, as far as yeah.
Raza is my name. Podcasting's my game.
You can subscribe here, and right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I have a day job, and I have album number 3 from Solamente, which is probably going to drop at some point by the end of the year. I'm hoping. That's solamente.band on Insta. And other than that, I have this podcast that I am super excited and frankly honored to be a part of. And everyone knows how to get in touch with us here. And that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Make sure, A Life in 6 Songs, like and subscribe. We're anywhere you find your podcast. We're there. If you want to watch us, we've got a YouTube channel, A Life in 6 Songs. Just search that. You can watch it, or you can just listen to the audio if that's how you like to get your podcasts. Find them anywhere. You can reach out to us at A Life in 6 Songs podcast at gmail.com. So yeah, definitely like, subscribe, follow us, go back, listen to the first couple episodes, learn who your hosts are. And then from here on out going forward, it's going to be, the 3 of us with another guest and stuff. And so we're going to hear some more songs and some more life stories. And we are very much excited. And so that has been A Life in 6 Songs.